The most important genres are the sonata, and in this case, we mean very similar to what we did in the Baroque period, which is a piece, a multi-movement work for solo instrument. The string quartet, which we'll talk about soon, the symphony, and the concerto. And now it's only going to be a solo concerto. You may have a duo or triple concerto, but it's not a grosso. It's along the lines of the solo concerto that we talked about in the Baroque period. Each of these genres consists of 3 or 4 movements, and they have contrasting tempos. Now, let me point out some things about the classical period that you'll find very helpful and very comforting. One of the things about classical music, I mentioned in class, it's always polite. It's always polite in that the listener knows exactly what to expect all the time. If you know that a sonata has 3 movements, you know that the first one is fast, the second one is slow, and the last one is fast. You also know that they're going to provide contrast, fast, slow, fast, balance, 2 fast movements on either side of a slow one in the middle. They're going to be symmetrical to a degree. These 2 movements are going to be in the same key. The last 2 movements are going to be in the same key. All of these things fit the ABA structure we were talking about, fit the ideas of contrast and balance. And by being predictable, it helps the audience member know what's going on. In that sense, it's polite. If there are 4 movements, typically you'll find that the first movement is fast. You always want to start with the fast movement because that catches the audience's attention. It's also where the weight of the piece is in the classical period. The weight, the intellectual weight, is vested in that first movement. The second movement is slow. It's often theme and variations. And the third movement is a minuet, which is a fast dance in 3. It has a specific structure that's outlined in your book. We'll look at the structures on the when we have the board with us in class. And a final movement that is often a rondo, ABACA. It could be ABACABA. And it can also have elements of sonata on top of the rondo. So, sonata form, slow movement, minuet. It's also called a minuet trio because you have a trio that follows it. You go back and do the minuet, which gives you a nice ABA shape. And rondo. Now you see how predictable everything is? If you've got 4 movements, those are the 4. If you've got 3, it's usually going to be, slow, fast, fast, slow, fast. And the last movement can be either the rondo or the minuet. First movement's going to be sonata form. It's so predictable. If you hear a slow movement on an unknown work, you guess it's the second movement in the classical period. It's so predictable that way. I'm going along with the PowerPoint to see where we are. I've just been through several slides on the PowerPoint. We will go over sonata form again in class. It is very important. And the book goes into details of sonata rondo form, and we'll look at that. In the classical period, the sonata is essentially what the book calls the essential domestic genre of instrumental music. I mean, it says the music is done at home. The main type of piece is done at home. And most often these are keyboard sonatas because the keyboard begins to flourish in the late 18th century. A lot more people are able to buy pianos. It's not a piano like you think of today. It's a very different piano, and we'll look at these and hear some of them in class together on Thursday. Now, along slightly after the middle of the 18th century, we get a movement called the Sturm und Drang period, storm and stress. And this is it's the fun period. Composers used these more minor keys, less smooth, more jagged, more syncopations to express the artiste and the temperament and so forth. And that's a storm and stress. And Haydn is a major proprietor of this. Now, I'm going to stop here because it's convenient and divide this into 2 parts.